You can't deny an abundance of mystery surrounding the old farmhouse, and I've often wondered why. Is it the environment or the individual who summons such things about? The old nature versus nurture debate. And I believe that the answer tends to lie in the perfect storm, the perfect combination of conditions occurring in just the right place, at just the right time, with just the right energy. My mother has a strong sense of family, culture, and the ties that bind. She was raised in a large household. Being among the oldest, she had her share of responsibilities in caring for the house and her younger siblings. She learned at an early age the importance of family. Her parents, my grandparents, had a house on Rochambeau Avenue, so she grew up with a strong sense of community within the street itself. She was already connected. It's no wonder that she could sense others about her, and that those others would gravitate to her. She was a nurturer, a caretaker. She cared about the house and took great pride in it. It meant a lot to her to own her own home. She used to tell us that no matter what, we were to keep the house. Not only was it symbolic of her accomplishments, but the house itself. It had a great energy. You walked through those doors and it felt warm and inviting. Everyone who ever came to visit felt comfortable, welcome, and at home. My mother had her share of encounters throughout the house. She will tell you that for her it was focused on the attic. She never felt alone when she was up there. There was a fan up in the roof of the attic designed to cool the house during the summer months. It went on automatically whenever the attic reached a certain temperature. One winter she went up into the attic to get some things out of storage when she thought she heard someone behind her. She turned, thinking it was me, following her up the attic stairs. Except that when she turned to face me, she discovered she was alone. And suddenly, of its own accord, the attic fan went on. She flipped the switch, but it wouldn't turn off. The fan hummed away as she felt the cool winter air pulsating down her neck, sending shivers down her spine. She flipped the switch back and back again. Her heart began to pound. She flipped the switch again and again, but the fan kept humming away, refusing to turn off. She could hear her heart pounding in her ears in a vain attempt to drown out the fan, and the undeniable cool, slow breaths pulsating on the nape of her neck. Struggling to remain calm, she knelt down and reached for the ladder, heading back into the house and scurrying to the basement to kill the main switch of the attic fan. After that, she tended to avoid the attic, waiting it out until one of our male friends dropped by with an excuse of needing some help with heavy boxes. And it wasn't just our family. It seemed that anyone who spent any length of time in the house saw or heard something. The wind rustling through the old window panes added a certain element of ambiance to the house as shadows moved about. Most often seen was the face of a burly, bearded man illuminating through the living room chandelier. He would appear and disappear so fleetingly that anyone who saw him immediately wondered if they had. There's a lot of energy roaming around the old farmhouse, so much so that it makes me wonder if the house itself somehow remains steadfast in testament to the past. There isn't much property left to the farmhouse. The storm farmland that once spread across the northwestern section of the village was slowly reduced to the size of the street, and finally nestled into its remaining little lot at the crest of the hill. But its roots remained intact. The very street itself always felt as if it never let go, never forgot. And while I had my little piece of earth to call home, the boundaries never really felt clear. Anna couldn't have been a closer neighbor. Our foundations lay a mere inches away. Anna loved having the houses so near. It offered her a sense of connection in an otherwise lonely world. She was born and raised in her house, the only daughter of Warren and Rachel King. Her parents were the first to own the home at 26 Rochambeau Avenue. Her father was the local postmaster. Her mother suffered in later years with dementia. Anna and her father cared for her mother until her passing in 1964. Anna always stayed close to home, under the protection of her father. She never dated, never married, never met anyone. When Anna's father, Warren, passed away in 1970, Anna went to work temporarily for Reader's Digest. My mother recalls the special Digest bus escorting her back and forth to work. The house grew lonely for her after her father's passing, and after she retired, there was little to occupy her days. She looked forward to the monthly Reader's Digest books she received in the mail as compensation for having worked in the company. As I look back, I can see that it was my husband, our dog, and I who provided Anna with a sense of comfort and family. She let us use her lot to garden, and my husband took full advantage of the opportunity. The garden was the envy of the street, spanning nearly the entire space of the lot. He built a chicken wire fence to keep the critters out, and we planted colorful zinnias around the border. I spent a lot of time with Anna in her yard gardening, and it was there that I heard most of her stories. Her father used to garden, and her mother made chili with the fresh garden tomatoes. She told us how her father planted corn, but we never had much luck. The ants always seemed to beat us to the harvest every time. But the rest of the garden I had a handle on. I loved every bit of gardening. I barely wore shoes, and enjoyed the feel of the grass and warm earth under my feet. Gardening gloves just got in the way. There's a comfort to the feel of the earth. It's a healing place. There is something about being that close to nature that makes you feel truly alive and very much connected. Early one spring morning, I headed out the back door to the garden when I noticed a strange arrangement. A circle of mushrooms was growing just outside the back door, and they sort of seemed to be pointing in the direction of the house. There was something purposeful about it. It seemed like a sign of sorts, and when I mentioned it to someone, they said it sounded like a fairy circle. I hit the books. A fairy circle is a naturally occurring circle of mushrooms, but those who have experienced a fairy circle will tell you there is nothing natural about it. Fairy circles are clouded in superstition. They are believed to be the result of a fairy or witch's dance. Most speak of danger and say that the circle is sacred, cursed to all intruders. I found it intriguing. Bad luck is said to fall upon those who enter the fairy circle. I don't believe in bad luck. Some go as far as to say that those who enter a circle enter into the mystic doorway, becoming forever trapped in time. I stepped ever so cautiously inside, half laughing at myself before jumping in and tempting my fate. Be there any truth to legend, I preferred to believe that the fairy circle might be a doorway between the fairy world and ours, and that stepping into that fairy ring would give me promised fairy sight. Nothing. After all, it was just a circle. It was a circle with almost a purpose, a signpost pointing towards my back door. But it didn't take me anywhere. I stood there foolishly. I mowed the lawn, careful not to disrupt the circle, hoping, waiting, I don't know, for something to come of this. I wanted to believe, but nothing. One day the grass just became too overgrown at the back door, and I had to mow down my fairy circle in order to be able to open the door. I lightheartedly apologized to the spirits that may have created the circle, explaining that I could no longer use my doorway unless I tended to theirs. That evening I turned out the light to go to sleep, when suddenly I heard a light patter on the floor. It wasn't the cat. She was in bed with me. Could it be a mouse? I quickly dismissed it, as it was too loud for a mouse. It sounded like a squirrel. Perhaps a squirrel had come in through the attic. If I knew what a squirrel sounded like anyway, I would have guessed it was a squirrel. The next night the pattern repeated itself. Just as I had turned out the light and lay my head to rest on the pillow, a pitter-patter across the floor. I sat up. The cat lay undisturbed. I turned out the light, and just as I put my head on the pillow, there it was again, like a scamper. I lay there this time, still, waiting, until I fell asleep in the quiet night. The next day I was walking in the hallway upstairs when I heard the patter of what sounded like two critters jumping along, running between my legs in play, and then past me. I heard it. I heard it so clear I could almost see them. It was as if two critters were pattering up the hallway and jumping over one another as they scurried between my footsteps in play, and then past me, right into my room. I looked in to find nothing. Silence. The all-too-familiar sound of the fairy scampering about became a common theme. My new house guests and I enjoyed one another's company. It seemed that the more attention I gave to them, the more they did to me, until I could sense them all around, and they inspired me. I began to paint them. When the people of the old world spoke of the fairy, they spoke of a race of little people closely connected to the soul of the earth. The logic presented in these images lies within our mind's ability to recreate something solid and tactile that corresponds with the energy we're experiencing. So in their minds, these people created an image as closely related to what they could feel. And the fairy took form. The garden flourished. The neighbors stopped to admire the garden and rainbow of zinnia and other flowers bordering the fence. The monarch butterflies flooded the fall sky as they feasted on the nectar. Nature in all its beauty had come to rest on Rochambeau Avenue. Anna King passed away in 1999. She was exhibiting early stages of dementia, and the summer heat wave was taking a toll on her. She kept running to the store for milk, and one day, while returning home from the store, a truck had struck her. She suffered mostly from shock and never recovered. I lost more than a friend and a neighbor that day. I lost a lifestyle so tightly woven among neighbors. Adapting was difficult. We had to give up the garden. A fence went up, and life as we knew it would never be the same. The whole world was changing. The summer of 2002 marked the end of an era. Ancient trees bordering the property line of northern Rochambeau Avenue fell to make way for a plastic field. The nightmare resonates deep within my soul to this day. We stood there helpless, watched the mighty spirits fall and disperse their energy to the changing winds. The house grew quiet. My heart broke in many ways that day, and it wasn't just me. They felt it too. I still find myself on occasion watching and hoping for their return.